Hello, please, if we can close the doors, please. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Alfredo Ergas. I'm director of Invest Chile Day. Thank you for being here. As always, to have a panel after the lunch is a challenge, but I'm sure that the people that we have been invited here, they will have very interesting topics. And the next topic will be infrastructure. As you know, Chile has been lead as a regional lead in infrastructure and the way how to do business. All what the Presidente Lagos did in related to the concessions, the law. We receive many types of investors in our region, and we have been developed a really impressive program. So for that, the concession model has been one of a kind, I would say, in the world. But that has been good for the last 20 years. So the question here, and that's my question for the Subsecretary, will be, what are the things that we need to do in order to have the next 20 or 30 years as success as has been? So as an introduction, I will thanks Subsecretary Balmaceda, who has been with us in New York, making a very interesting presentation. And right now, he want to be with us. So please, a big applause for Subsecretary Balmaceda. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. It is a challenge indeed. I remember when I was in high school, on Mondays we had physical education from 12 to 2 p.m. And then we had lunch. And then the poor professor that had that class after that, I mean, he had to do the impossible in order to keep the audience awake. So that's my goal. I promise I will keep you awake for 15 minutes only. Very good. So we're going to discuss about the Chilean concession system. I know some of you are well aware of its main features, but I don't think it will damage to recall some of those features, because sometimes when the obvious is not said, it is forgotten. And I believe that there are a couple of trends that I want to emphasize and to finalize with an invitation to all of you. Why invest in infrastructure? That was part of the discussion in the previous panel, so I'm not going to take too much time on this. But I believe that Chile, as an institutional destination for infrastructure, has at least 4 distinctive features. One of them is our investment grade. That's something that foreign investors should take into account. Chile has a sovereign credit rating as A, reaffirmed in 2025 by the 3 main rating agencies as stable, and that put us in several notches over our closest competitor, Uruguay, for instance. It's 3 notches down. And it's a very small country, as you may know. And Brazil and Colombia, it's 5 to 6 notches in that scale. So we are happy to present to investors that we are still a country with levels of risk well managed. Second, the hedging against local inflation. Most of you are familiarized with the UF, and that allows foreign investors to take long bets in Chilean infrastructure. You can issue, with not too much trouble, a bond for 25 years in denominated UF that will cover you from those effects of local inflation. We understand that we have a challenge over here, and that's something that I've been getting from New York and Canada as well, in terms to allow the certain payments in US dollars. That's something that we are working on. Actually, yesterday I spoke with the ministry, Quiroz, Finance Ministry, along these lines, and he's open and encourage us to better understand what can be offered, perhaps tranches. It could be some parts in UF and parts of the payments in dollars that might get us more interest from foreign investors. Third, 37 bilateral tax treaties in force put Chile as a leader worldwide in terms of these agreements. That has been a distinctive characteristic of our country for many, many years, and and several different governments have honored that tradition, and we are continuously working along those lines. And finally, the fourth feature that I want to mention to you is the tax invariability regime for foreign investment. This is something that we had for a long time in Chile. Since 1974 until 2016, we had a 42% of tax rate fixed for foreign investment. That, unfortunately, was eliminated in 2016. But this new administration, we've been only 2 months in power, but already presented a draft of law, including, among many other projects that, let's say projects that were, some of them were explained by the Ministry of Environment and the Undersecretary of Mining. We included the invariability regime because we are sure that this is something that foreign investors are looking for. And it's designed in terms that even future changes in legislation will not affect that, because it is an invariability that will be fixed on specific projects. So as long as the project lasts, that invariability will not change, although laws may change. What's our strategic framework for the next 4 years as a new administration? Well, the mandate of President Cast, it's simple and it's clear. I mean, we need to convince foreign investors in order to continuing their bets in Chile. We have 4 pillars. 2 of them are more related to this audience, so I will concentrate in the first 2. The first one, investment stimulus. We have 70 priority initiatives across the entire Ministry of Public Works for 28 billion. Half of them would be under a PPP model, public-private partnership. The other half is direct works to be engaged by the Ministry of Public Works. Those priorities are constantly checked by a specific group that is advising us, and their only task is to make sure that those priorities happen. The problem that we have experienced in Chile is in connection with this obscure word that we come up with, the permitology, which has made our life difficult. And for instance, we have 10,000 billion projects that have been already adjudicated through concession system that cannot start construction because several reasons. We are working on that regard. The Ministry of the Environment explained how recent legislation and additional measures that we are taking as a government will reduce those permitting stages in 30%, and that's our goal. We want to see those 28 billions executed during our 4-year term. Secondly, and perhaps it's not the most fancy initiative, or it won't get much press because it's a bit technical and boring, perhaps, but we want to leave the country with a long-term strategic planning initiative. We do have a division under the ministry, which is the planning division, which hasn't been doing much on that regard. The planning of infrastructure in Chile sometimes responds to local pressure, to political views, and what we want to leave the country after our 4 years is to have a national system which is objective, technical, and goes beyond the governments in terms that the priorities will set up and will be no subject to challenge or second reviews. This is something that we are working as of now, and we expect to give some announcement in the coming month. In the same line, regulatory facilitation to increase competition is something that we are keen on and working on, as it was explained in the previous panel, and that's the way that we want to tackle this permittology issue. The other two pillars are very important for the country, but perhaps not for an audience like this one, which is water for development. There are initiatives in order to tackle the hydric crisis that the country has been facing for the past 15 years. And also connectivity. We have many areas, especially in the south of Chile, that are isolated. There are Chileans living there that do not have good ways to, good roads to go through, and we are betting a lot of resources on helping them to be a more connected part of the country. Over 3 decades of concession continuity speak by itself. We have a stable legal framework, although the country has faced several challenges and even 2 constitutional processes. Nobody has been serious in thinking to dismantle our PPP system. Everybody recognizes the value of the concessions. They have been there for over 30 years, and they will be for much longer times. Infrastructure needs stability and needs longer times. And that's something that has been recognized for the majority of the country. There were some minority voices speaking against this, but after 2 constitutional processes, we are currently under the rule of the Constitution that has more approvals all over the world. It went through 5 different processes, and nothing has dramatically changed. And that, I believe, is good news for long-term investors. 8 successive administrations from 4 different political coalitions has supported this. We have had in the past governments from right, center left, and all of them agree in this model, and that's something that we like to point out. The consolidation, we have a consolidated market with global operators. There you can see a handful of the sponsors of concession projects that are active in the country, and it's a very good list, very solid companies from all over the world, and our goal is to expand that list in the next 4 years. And finally, concessions have a specific dispute resolution methods. Unlike public works that are not under concession, which had to go to the ordinary tribunal system and taking very long in order to get a final decision, the concessions have this specific system with technical panels, arbitration commissions, and the Court of Appeals, and even international courts if required. And this is in connection with the 37 bilateral tax treaties that allows them to ask for a fastest and very professional solution of that dispute. In terms of the agreements that are under this system in the country, we have, as of today, 81 that are active, barely $30 billion in 30 years, which is on average $1 billion per year. We have 19 contracts under construction, over $5 billion. 16 contracts in operation with constructions, because now we are witnessing the second wave of concession. Those agreements have been in place for 20, 25 years. So we have second generations of concession over those agreements, and it's very standard that along with the renewal of the concession or the new process, new works are required, and that's why we have contracts that are with construction and operation at the same time, over $8 billion. And 46 contracts which are in operation as of this date. This is a summary of the portfolio that we are going to present to you. The concession portfolio for the next 4 years amounts to roughly $15.5 billion. And it's a very diverse portfolio. This is something that I like to emphasize because in those 30 years, what we have done, it's 80% of toll roads, basically, or roads. But now we are changing that. We are offering 55% of our portfolio on roads, and the new sectors are amounting barely the 45 remaining percentage, with prisons, border facilities, early warnings, tsunami systems, desalination, among many others. One of the features that we were required by President Cast and by Ministro Arrau at the MOP is to be fully open to have a technical calibration with the industry. We devote a substantive amount of our time to meet with investors, meet with constructors, with engineers, and to get them all the feedback that is necessary. That's the reason why I'm here, and I'm totally open, and please, if you see me outside, don't be shy, stop by, and let's have a conversation, because this is what we do. We are planning to work alongside with the industry to make our processes faster, more efficient, and not launching biddings that at the end do not get any offers or only one or two, as it has been happening in the past time. In those 30 years, the decline of competition has been dramatically. In the first 10 years, from 95 to 2005, we were receiving 4 offers on average, which is pretty good for an international standards. IDB, World Bank, and others say that 3 or more, it's ideal. The first 10 years, very good, 4. But then the second 10 years, from 2005 to 2015, we got 2.7 on average, which is almost the 3, the ideal 3, but it's less than that, so we had a small alarm trigger. The last 10 years, it's been less than 2, and that set up all the alarms. I mean, we cannot be working for months in processes that are not getting even 1 or 2 offers, and that's something that we are determined to change. And finally, our contracts allow or give space to different type of investors. We have some contracts with availability payment models, like the prisons, for instance, or revenue distribution mechanisms, like our airports, or minimum income guarantees, like airports as well, and some roads. So the plan is to have a strong portfolio that offers several types of concession with different ways of payment, hopefully different currency, and in that way we believe that we are going to see a change in this dramatic trend in the competition and getting more and more offers. This is the portfolio for the next 4 years with an analysis year by year. It's self-explanatory for 2026 to 2030. You see the amounts. On average, $4,000 million or 4 billions, which is 4 times what Chile has done on average in 30 years. And this is the goal that we have set on us, and this is what we are aiming to. The core of the pipeline, as I explained before, 55% would be toll roads, and those are the main types of roads. The axis, Route 5, the Carretera Panamericana, that goes throughout the country, almost 3 billion. New urban corridors, alternatives to that Route 5, 3 billions as well. Regional connectivity, 2.5 billions, and that gives us a portfolio of roads of 8.3 billion, which is 55% of the pipeline. And this is specific calls for bids that we have already in place with dates. These are not ideas, this is not just mere projects, and this is our process that are in place, and all of you are more than welcome to take part of it. Starting with July, the tender of the Route 57 is almost 1 billion. and then different amounts. And that's another thing that is distinctive of this portfolio, because we have projects of different sizes. For some companies, a ticket of 300 is enough, or $500 million. Well, there you go. You have several. Others are asking for 1 billion. Well, they have the option as well to tender in those type of projects. And the new sectors, and this is the novelty of the administration of President Cast. Penitentiary, almost $4 billion. This is a big change for the country. We have had some prisons on the concession system, but not much. It was a very timid or shy intervention in the past, and we are taking this very strongly. We had enacted legislation that allow us to expand on current penitentiary facilities without the struggles of the permitting issue, because if there is a prison already there, and if there is enough land on that area, there shouldn't be permitting issues that are stopping us to increase our capacity. Chile, as many countries, are facing a serious overcrowded problem with our prisons. We have 60,000 inmates in the country and only 40,000 places. So we have almost 50% of overcrowding. And with this program, we expect to get 25,000 more places in order to solve the overcrowded problem and give some extra room for the future. Border facilities, this is totally new. We haven't had concessions on this type of infrastructure, and we are pushing this as a part of the security agenda of President Cast. We had an issue with illegal immigration, and through border facilities and technology, we are working to tackle that. Desalination, this is something that has worked very well in the country. We don't see that we need much intervention from the state. We have 31 desalination plants working that are adding up 14,000 liters per second, and that has been driven by the private industry. And there are 51 projects along the line in close to execution, some of them in engineering, some of them in construction. So we don't think that this is something where we need the state working very actively, except for this specific project, which is in the region of Coquimbo, which is the one that is facing the biggest problems with scarcity of water, and that this is the way where we believe that the good public resources will be in good use, and that's why we did this specific project. Early warnings I already mentioned, and other facilities. And the immediate deal flow, as you can see, only in the next 8-month pipeline, we have 4 billion projects. This is extremely, extremely aggressive, and we are working very hard in order to get this accomplished, and we think that we are in the right track. And this is it. We are open to dialogue. We're very happy to be here. We expect having new competitors in our system. This is the similar pitch that I gave in New York, where we do not have much stakeholders in our PPP system, unlike Canada. That's why we prefer Canada. We like them very much, and we hope that the companies that are already in our system will increase their participation, and this is an invitation for new stakeholders as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the insightful and very interesting presentation. I think during a trip that we have a couple of weeks ago, we hear that there is another country who used to have a file where they travel in Europe trying to sell in the different projects, and the Secretary, you have done very good, and to present a clear and real portfolio that it will be attractive for investor to go for Chile. So right now we have perhaps one of the good part of the things to have a Chile Day. What this is a panel It's a vivid panel because we have a very good moderator for that. So I would like to introduce Nicole Keller, who would like, if you want to pass, Nicole. And also, we have been invited two people that have an active presence in the infrastructure. The first is Mr. Igor Romitelli. He is Managing Director, Infrastructure and Natural Resources at the Ontario Teacher Pension Fund, who has been in the country for many years. And also, I would like to invite to Mr. Ricardo Szlejf, Head of Real Asset in Latin America for CPP Investments. So, give an applause. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Alfredo. We've heard a lot about the concession system today. We heard it from Minister Quiroz, we heard it from Susana Jimenez, and now we've just heard a very interesting pipeline. And I think that we can all agree that Chile has been 3 decades building one of Latin America's most consistent infrastructure track record, but consistency is not always competitiveness. So today what we're seeing is Chile is asking a more harder question, not only how to attract investment, but how to attract more of it from more players and on better terms. And that's why I find it very interesting to be with two investors who make allocation decisions every day across markets, across assets, across different risks. And they are not just looking as potential investors. They are in Chile already in very important assets right now. And when we prepared this panel, the Undersecretary said something very specific, that he would like to hear what Chile could do better. So that's precisely what we're going to do right now. And I would like asking Igor and Ricardo, and when you are evaluating today where to deploy capital in infrastructure across emerging markets, what rate makes the real difference, not just in paper, but also in practice? And what are you seeing in terms of what Chile is offering, what Chile could maybe do different, and other interesting initiatives or frameworks that you're seeing in other countries across the world? Igor.
Yes, thank you. Well, hola a todos, buenas tardes. My name is Igor Romitelli. I'm a managing director with Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, and I'm responsible for covering South America, where our key markets are Brazil and Chile. We've been in South America for 20 years. We've been in Chile for 19 years. We acquired South Water, which is our portfolio of water utilities, in 2007. And we acquired Grupo Saesa in 2008, our electric utility, which we still own alongside our partners, AIMCO. So of course, Chile is a critical market for us, and this is a very topical conversation for the fund. So thank you for having me. To your question, I would say, we are predominantly core infrastructure investors in emerging markets in Latin America. I think most in this room will know what that means, so I'm not going to bore you with the definition. So I think one thing I would really highlight at this point in this cycle, and it's been a recurring theme, I would say, in the event so far, is really regulatory track record and stability, right? I think it's been always a key piece of our investment decision, but I would say over the last 5 to 10 years, it has become even more important, right? Because on one hand, I would say every market we're active in, and Chile is not an exception, there is a need for infrastructure build out, and that comes from, aging assets, some idiosyncratic and specific themes like energy transition, all the way to, protecting against the risks of things like climate change, usually a conjunction of all three. And on the other hand, we're of course very cognizant of the fact that, with inflationary and cost of living pressures, paying for those assets has become a very topical and sometimes complex issue, right? But I would say that the hallmark of a successful and strong regulatory framework is that it works even in times of crisis, right? And although we've had some challenges in Chile, I would say, especially from 2019 onwards, I would say that we see the trends today as very, very positive, and we're quite confident that we're going to make important strides with the current cycle and the current administration to, reaching some important decisions there. So yeah, again, there's a lot that goes into our decision making, but I would certainly highlight the regulatory stability piece for sure today.
Ricardo, the same question, and maybe would like to add as well in terms of asset typology, roads, airports, hospitals. The Undersecretary presented new areas as well. What are you finding today more attractive, and why, and specifically in terms of Chile?
Thank you, and Well, thank you for the question, Nicole, and thanks for the Chile Day organization team for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here in this panel with my partner, Igor. We are partners of Ontario Teachers in a number of different investments with El Subsecretario. Like Ontario Teachers, CPP is one of the largest institutional investors in the world and also one of the largest institutional investors in infrastructure in the world. We currently manage 800 billion, almost 800 billion Canadian dollars, of which 100 billion are invested in infrastructure and energy. And Chile is one of the most important markets in which we, like Ontario Teachers, have been investing for almost 20 years. We did our first investment in Chile and also CPP's first investment in infrastructure in Transelec in 2006. And then we have also been investing in Grupo Costanera, a toll road platform, which is also a client of many of the projects that have been developed by the MOP since 2012. And I would say Chile has been a very attractive market for us, for long-term infrastructure investors like us. Chile provides two things which I see as very important, both stability and the growth. Stability because of the rule of law, of some of the things that the Subsecretary mentioned in his presentation, the welcoming approach to private capital in infrastructure, the investment grade rating status, the tax stability agreements. There are lots of ingredients which are very important for long-term investors like us. And also the growth. For us, it's important not only to have existing infrastructure assets, but actually we prefer to have these assets becoming platforms that can generate cash and that can reinvest the cash flows in future growth opportunities. Now, coming directly to Nicole's question, infrastructure has been a competitive landscape. There has been a lot of activity globally in infrastructure. I think we are moving to a world in which there is a bit of a back to basics, people focusing on resources, on energy, on land, on real assets. And as a result of that, there has been a lot of appetite for investments in infrastructure. So we are obviously very interested in Chile, but we have been looking for also for other markets. So what would make us continue what makes us continue be focused in Chile is really about stability, about balanced concession contracts, and I would say finding opportunities in scale. I think one of the when looking at the different subsectors which the Subsecretary presented, some are more capital intensive. I would say roads is the main one, and airports, which was not on the list, but it's also a very capital intensive subsector. Others are very interesting, but slightly smaller. Would CPP, with this size, invest directly in prisons, in social infrastructure? We would not. We could potentially invest in a large platform that invests in social infrastructure projects. But for us, the more capital intensive, I think a bit like for teachers, continues to be the most attractive.
So mid-sales, what the Undersecretary was presenting in terms of having different ticket prices for different investors. Undersecretary, you mentioned that you were worried about bids, about there are fewer companies coming through, and it's something that you're interested in pushing forward. Are there any specific initiatives or things you have picked up during your 2 months, intensive 2 months, or during meetings in this Chile Day, where you see there's an opportunity to make these bids more interesting for having, maybe, I don't know, the same bidders coming all together or having new bidders that have not entered the Chilean market yet?
I think we're in a better, in a good position in terms that we have the projects, and that's what this industry needs, because the capital is available and the financing is available as well, and what the industry is looking for is good projects. And I think we have a very strong pipeline of projects to offer from different types, from different sizes, and we need just to work on certain very specific issues that will trigger that competition again. And one of them is the one that I mentioned in terms of the currency, right? We do have an FX hedge market in the country that would allow you to cover from UF to dollar between 5 and 10 years, even 10 years. But these are projects that should last for 20 or 30 years. So that's a gap that we need to tackle. IDB is working on that already, and they are prepared to bid on those projects. But I believe, and as I mentioned, and the good news that I share here, and this is breaking news actually, because I didn't know that in New York, how I was going to be accepted or not with the idea, but speaking with the Ministry of Finance, and he's a man of, I believe was the president of the Congress here, that defined him as a man from the irons. He knows his job, and he's in the microeconomic side of the business, so he knows what are the requirements and what are the challenges. And I think that we can work with them, with his finance team very well, in order to have an offer for dollars in our market that I believe will help a lot. And the other thing would be to keep working on the permittology. We have taken good measures in that regard. Again, thank you to our congressmen that have approved a law last year, the law framework for authorizations, sectorial authorizations, that will help with the rules that we are writing in the different ministries to reduce those processes in at least in 30%. I think it's going to be bigger than that, a larger number, but we are conservative people, so we play safe. I believe that those two areas will help us in order to get the competition that we need.
Good news. In terms of project administration, that's something we discussed previously as well. Oversight, execution risk, etc. I would be interested in hearing investors on where do you see, when projects are being executed, where are you seeing today the main bottlenecks, and what have you seen maybe in other markets that have worked to see how infrastructure projects are actually delivered on time and on a budget? Igor.
Yeah, I would say that, again, in two topical pieces I've already heard during the event. I think permitting and environmental licensing, it's clear that it has been a huge bottleneck for Chile. And I think the biggest acid test is, when you think about large, let's call it nation-building projects like Cardones Polpaico, like Quimalo Aguirre, to me, it's just a shame that there's been so many bottlenecks to get these projects done and unlock some of the potential that Chile has, for instance, in this case, as a huge producer of renewable power out of the north region of Chile. So, I think it's great that we're hearing this huge and coordinated push towards something better there. That is against one big piece. The other piece that's related to this is just management of right-of-ways. And again, this is particularly relevant for sure in terms of everything from transmission lines all the way to toll roads. And I think, as I would say a regional and close benchmark, and this will maybe sound a little bit biased because I'm Brazilian, but I think Brazil, I would say, has been quite successful on the transmission side with their concession program, right, in kind of building out those key core enormous projects with, I would say, similar challenges, and in many cases bigger challenges, right? So I think Chile and Brazil are close markets, so I think an interchange there in terms of kind of political and economic and regulatory best practices would be interesting, and I'm sure that Brazil has also a lot to learn from Chile as well in other matters. So I would highlight those points in particular.
How about you? And also be interesting to see if, just as Igor mentions as well, any other models have you seen in other countries where you have a lot of investment that you have seen had worked or could be possibly best practices to see here in Chile?
Yeah, no, and the toll road, the concession framework has been very successful in Chile for a very, very long time. And being long-term investors, we have been supporting Grupo Costanera, our toll road business, during very different times in different cycles and administrations. We have bid for several of the auctions that were granted in the last few years, despite what was a period of a lot of volatility in Chile, from the social unrest to COVID, to the discussion of the two constitutions. But we have always seen a strong commitment to the concession framework, to the rule of law, and that gave us comfort to bid. We won a few, we lost others, but that's really what part of what the concession business is about. I think the biggest frustration and what we have been discussing in the last few years is what you Chileans refer as permisología, which has been I think the main bottleneck, both for the execution of the projects that were awarded and also the bringing more projects to market. It is very reassuring to learn the commitments of this new administration to make adjustments for that. So I think that's I would say encouraging in terms of seeing more deal flow. Several of our concessions are delayed. And it's not always easy to explain to our investment committees what is causing the delay. But on the other hand, Chile, having seen so much development in the last years, especially compared to other Latin American countries, the institutions strengthen, and permitting and approval processes also get more sophisticated. And when people here in Canada see projects delaying more than expected, their reaction would be, well, I understand projects here in Canada have also been delaying much more than expected, or projects in Europe and have also been taking much more than expected. But Chile needs a big push in infrastructure. I think we all agree, so seeing these approvals move faster would be a great accomplishment.
If you allow me,
Please.
on a positive note, let's not forget the good things that we have done on this regard. And when you mentioned toll roads, I mean, Chilean toll roads are a world-class asset, and everyone that has a foreign friend, when it comes to Santiago for the first time, the first thing that they praise us is about those highways, which are really spectacular. We've done good on that regard, and we have challenges to face, but we know them. Another good thing is that the country has come to a common ground in terms of diagnosis. We don't have to set up more negotiate or commissions or tables in order to understand what's been wrong and what we need to do. I think there is a fairly clear agreement in our society in terms of the direction that we need to move. Actually, the legislation that I mentioned that was passed through the last administration, President Boric's administration, enacted this law that is going to help us to reduce the time for permitting. And as a Ministry of Public Works, for instance, we had a huge problem in the General Directorate of Water, the DGA. We have 28,000 requests that have not been responded in due time. They have been accumulated for several years, not only during the last administration, but even before that. But the fact is that a desk that should have no folders on top of that, today has 28,000 requests. And we have a plan that in order to reduce that to 0 in 4 years. And we know how, and we will do it.
Well, that's an interesting point. I was just going to ask you about that, because when you mentioned something that I don't remember any undersecretary saying before. When you said, I have a very interesting pipeline, it's a huge amount of money, but it's important to have a pipeline, but we want to make it more efficient. And that's something I think it's different from what we've been hearing in the last years. You mentioned a few examples right now, but what other things have come up in these diagnoses that you're mentioning where you see maybe 2-3 pinpoints that you know that if you press those buttons, things can go much faster? Like, for example, the example we were seeing in the last panel from the Minister of Environment.
Yeah, I don't think that they mentioned that example, but the fact that a problem that we have experienced is that authorizations that are given by the state can be declared null and void after 2 years, and that's something that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if there is something wrong with that, it should be in a very short period of time. The reconstruction law that was passed and approved in the first last week on first stage has, for instance, set up a deadline for 6 months. And that's the type of thing. Maybe it's not like big announcements, but it demands a lot of coordination among entities, state entities. I dedicate a good deal of my time to speak with my colleagues in other ministries in order to ask them for their approvals that are pending, or the other way around, from our approvals that are pending. And we are tackling those numbers down. I believe Minister Quiroz explained how they set up this dashboard where with artificial intelligence, they are searching on all the pending authorizations and are showing very graphically which governmental entity is due on certain authorization. And that's something that it's been reviewed weekly at a very high level on the government. And for instance, the MOB had I believe something like 100 authorizations that were due, and after 2 weeks of being called from the presidency to know what's going on, now the number went down to 5, and this is the type of thing that I think will help a lot.
Yeah. Just to start closing the panel, we've talked a lot about the investors' vision on what makes Chile more attractive. The Undersecretary has done a great job also at putting forward the pipeline and what they're doing. What would you say in just maybe 1 to 2 minutes, from your point of view, just straight to the point, what is working right now and one thing that could work better? I'm just saying this because Undersecretary was very interested in taking homework after this Chile though, so I think it would be interesting to close the panel with those intentions.
I think I would say that Chile, and I mentioned this, has been and continues to be a critical market for us. Or so far, it's been a great run, right? It's no wonder that the companies that we acquired back in 2007 and 2008 are still in our portfolio, but more than that, they have grown tremendously because they have participated in a lot of this growth. They've participated in a lot of these new tenders, right? And that has been great to see from a financial standpoint, but also to really participate in the build out of this critical infrastructure of Chile. And again, I mean, we touched on this, but it goes from everything from rule of law to economic and financial macro stability to the underpinnings of this concession program. And I would say to the capacity, and this is, I would say, a great differentiator of Chile compared to the rest of LATAM, right? The capacity, I would say that the strength of the institutions and the capacity to, from administration to administration, to not lose at least the core of what makes Chile a great market and a great jurisdiction in LATAM. And we expect that to continue, and that's why our appetite to Chile has remained, stable and quite high on a relative basis over these last 20 years. And I think in terms of improvements, I've touched on a couple of them, and I think the great thing is that it's clear, right, and we've seen this in this event, we've seen this in bilateral conversations with the government. It's clear that there is a lot of consensus and alignment between the government and also between private investors in terms of what needs to be done and what needs to be improved upon. And again, like I said, we're confident that we're going to see that over the next few years.
Right. Ricardo?
Yeah, from my side, I would say what has worked well, I think we touched a bit, is the stability, rule of law, and the openness of the public sector to work jointly with the private sector to achieve outcomes which are win-win for the users of the infrastructure, for the investors, and for the government. The areas of development, we touched on the point on the permits. There's another point we haven't mentioned, is the uncollectability. We have seen a significant increase in the delinquency and in the toll roads in the system, with sometimes some challenges in enforceability, in being able to receive the cash revenues from the system. So that's also an area where we understand Grupo Costanera and the other toll road concessions have been working with the MOP to address, and will definitely create more certainty that will allow us to continue to support Grupo Costanera to bid for new projects in the country.
Undersecretary, your closing statements to attract more investment, Canadian investment
Yes,
to Chile.
yes. Well, first and foremost, to thank the Canadian entities to trust in Chile. We've been a partner for a long time, and we expect to be an even better partner. We have had some criticism in the past that the ministry, at least the Ministry of Public Works, were not that open for discussions and flexible to renegotiate agreements. And that we are determined to change that. We truly believe that competition will make us a better country. It will make your companies better companies, and it will help the citizens of Chile to get the infrastructure that we need.
Well, thank you, Nicolás, Igor, and Ricardo, for your insights. I think the main takeaway is that there's a lot done, a very strong infrastructure sector, but there's a lot to do as well.
Yes.
And Undersecretary is working hard on that. But we also know that what we need is capital, but also expertise and commitment, and that's what we're looking for right now. So thank you very much for your participation in this infrastructure panel.
Thank you.